Hello everybody and welcome to Kevin Kraut YouTube channel. I'm going to be discussing week 5 of the 2021 college football season. You got Virginia versus Miami. They already played. Miami lost again to Virginia. We have Houston versus Tulsa. That's tonight. I'm going to go with Houston. Iowa versus Maryland. I'm going to go with Maryland. BYU versus Utah State. I'm going to go with BYU. And then Saturday's games, which is probably over 50 games or more. You got Arkansas versus Georgia. I'm going to go with Georgia, even though I don't like Arkansas either. I don't like Georgia either. We got Michigan versus Wisconsin. I'll go with Wisconsin. Tennessee versus Missouri. I'm gonna go with Tennessee. Charlotte versus Illinois. I'm gonna go with Illinois. Pittsburgh versus Georgia Tech. I'm gonna go with Pittsburgh. Duke versus North Carolina. That could basically be a rivalry because they're both in North Carolina. I'm going to go with North Carolina on this one. Minnesota versus Purdue. I'm going to go with Minnesota. No, I'm going to go with Purdue. I'm going to change my mind. Toledo versus UMass. I'm going to go with Toledo. Texas versus TCU. I'm going to go with Texas. Memphis versus Temple. I'm going to go with Memphis. Western Michigan versus Buffalo. I'm going to go with Western Michigan. Louisville versus Wake Forest. I'm going to go with Wake Forest. App State versus Georgia State. I'm going to go with App State. USC versus Colorado. I'm going to go with Colorado. Cincinnati versus Notre Dame. Cincinnati's a good team. So is Notre Dame. I think Cincinnati pulls this one off against Notre Dame. Or it could go the other way, but I'm going to go with Cincinnati. UL Monroe versus Coastal. I'm going to go with Coastal. They have a hot streak going on right now. Eastern Michigan versus Northern Illinois. I'll go with Northern Illinois. Ole Miss versus Alabama. Of course, I'm going to go with Alabama. Oregon versus Stanford. I'm going to go with, I guess, Oregon on this one. Oklahoma versus Kansas State. I'm going to go with Oklahoma. Ohio State versus Rutgers. I'm going to go with Ohio State. I don't see how in the world they're still 11th, though. Ohio State. Troy versus South Carolina. I have to come back to this one. I think South Carolina is going to pull this one off. Florida International versus Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic. Syracuse versus Florida State. I'm going to go with Florida State. Texas Tech versus West Virginia. UCF versus Navy. Navy has been doing really bad lately. I'm going to go with Navy. They might pull this, or they might win this one. Tulane versus East Carolina. Tulane. Central Michigan versus Miami, Ohio. I'm going to go with Central Michigan. Ohio versus Akron. I'm going to go with Ohio. Bowling Green versus Kent State. I'm going to go with Bowling Green. Nevada versus Boise State. I'm going to go with Boise State. South Florida versus SMU. Going to go with SMU. Arkansas State versus Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern. Army versus Ball State. I'm going to go with Army. Washington State versus California. I'm going to go with California. Florida versus Kentucky. I'm going to go with Florida on this one. I know South Carolina almost could have won, but they didn't. But I think Florida beats Kentucky this time. Louisiana Tech versus NC State. I'll go with NC State. UNLV versus UTSA. UTSA, I guess. Southern Miss versus Rice. I'm going to go with Southern Miss. Air Force versus New Mexico. I'm going to go with Air Force. Mississippi State versus Texas A&M. I'm going to go with Mississippi State. Baylor versus Oklahoma State. I'm going to go with Baylor. Marshall versus Middle Tennessee. I'm going to go with Marshall. Liberty versus UAV. I'm going to go with Liberty. Kansas versus Iowa State. I'm going to go with Iowa State. Indiana versus Penn State. I'm going to go with Penn State on this one. Western Kentucky versus Michigan State. I guess Michigan State on this one. Oh my. And then you have Boston College at Clemson, who has dropped to, is this right? Am I reading this right? Clemson has dropped to number 25 in the country. Wow. When they dropped dramatically. I'm gonna pick Boston College on this one. I just don't see Clemson recovering. UConn versus Vanderbilt. I'm gonna go with UConn. Louisiana versus South Alabama. Oh, I missed one. I'm gonna pick South Alabama on that one. And Northeastern versus Nebraska. Auburn versus LSU. I'm gonna pick Auburn. Old Dominion versus UTEP. I'm gonna pick UTEP. Washington versus Oregon State. I'm gonna go with Oregon State. Arizona State versus UCLA. I'm gonna go with Arizona State. New Mexico State versus San Jose State. I'm gonna go with New Mexico State. Fresno State versus Hawaii. I'm gonna go with Fresno State. And let's go back to two teams. Remember, Clemson was 6th. Wasn't they 6th last time I saw them? And they dropped to the 25th. Wow. That is crazy. They're in serious trouble, I think. Troy versus South Carolina. This is a game Gamecocks could possibly I think they can win this game. If they can disrupt their defense, I think they got a shot. They do have a good defense, Troy does. I'm not saying South Carolina don't, because they lost by a touchdown, or by like 6 points. They lost by 6 points last time. I think they could have did better. I think O-line in South Carolina has not been doing good, but I think they find a way to beat Troy this weekend. Because Kentucky, I wouldn't say they're perfect, And if you like this video, don't forget to like and share and subscribe. And ring that notification bell. And week 6 next week of the college 2021 college football. I will see y'all later.